Hi there, my name's Jo Gamble and I'm a functional medicine practitioner. And today I want to talk to you about the concept of long COVID. Why? Because this is certainly something I'm seeing more and more of in my clinics. And because of that, I have had to undergo so much research to help my clients. I want to start off by talking about inflammation. What you can see at the bottom of my slide here is the bell-shaped curve associated with an increase in inflammation for anybody undergoing the COVID-19 infection. We start off with relatively low levels of inflammation, we get a sudden spike, and then the inflammation comes down at the end. But if you start off with a baseline level of high inflammation, look at diagram B at the top of the slide, then what happens is the top of that bell goes into a high risk threshold. So if you've already got underlying inflammation, maybe you've got an autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, that's a thyroid autoimmune disease, or maybe you've got some baseline inflammation. I hate to say this, inflammation is created from belly fat. So if you've got increased belly fat, you might have increased inflammation from that means. Then your baseline level is already at a much higher starting point, and therefore your bell-shaped curve is certainly going to go into that higher risk inflammatory response within our body. I want you to think of inflammation a bit like a bushfire. When it starts off, it just spreads. So of course, if we start off with the fire already ignited, then we're going to end up with more inflammation. And that's what you might have heard of this term, cytokine storm. In a cytokine storm, it's inflammation flying off all around the body. So whilst your underlying inflammation might have been linked to your bad knee or arthritis in your knee, in a cytokine storm, we get inflammation all over our body. And yes, that might start with a fever, which is part of our own body's immune system or regulation to infection. But that cytokine storm can create a myriad of features throughout the whole of your body. And it intensifies and intensifies and intensifies. And that's what we see as part of the long COVID picture. Inflammation multiplying through the body. And then what happens? Well, this is where age comes into the picture, because as we age, we see deterioration in some of our body systems anyway. But that isn't just an age-induced, it's a my body's out of balance induced response. So then what we see is long COVID then goes on and creates more dysregulation. Our mitochondria, so that's the left of my image, our mitochondria are little battery cells. Think of them like Duracell bunny batteries. A Duracell bunny goes on and on and on. But if we've got mitochondrial dysfunction, we're going shopping with Audi batteries. They might not get very far. Therefore, we end up with increased fatigue. Think of it like that Duracell bunny goes on and on and on. A value battery, that's not going to go on and on and on. We then have altered communication throughout our whole body, and we get more cellular damage created. And that's what we're seeing as part of this long COVID. Now, beyond it just being a lung problem, the gut-lung axis is supposed to be bidirectional, meaning in and out. And when inflammation occurs in the lung, it can affect the gut microbiota as well, meaning that that virus and those inflammatory cells that are initially created in the lungs, that's part of the acute lung problems associated with COVID, then goes on and causes chronic gut symptoms. And this might be where some of you are presenting with diarrhea, constipation, alterations in digestive processes, wind, gas, pain. These are all part of that inflammatory mediators traveling into the gut. Now, another marker that seems to have been considerably linked to implications in long COVID is that of cortisol. Now, cortisol is our stress hormone. And again, think of it like your baseline levels. Now, in the 21st century, we are running on so much baseline cortisol. Why? Just to get us through our days. So if you think about life pre-lockdown, were you running around all over the place? Maybe you were working, looking after children, looking after elderly parents, maybe 2 jobs, having to go shopping at the end of your day, having to clean your house, cook. All of these things are stressful. And therefore, when we start an infection with a raised baseline cortisol, and we know that that infection causes an acceleration of cortisol, then is it a surprise that our body goes into a highly stressed situation? And actually, serum cortisol levels are one of the markers to look at those with greater risk of death associated with COVID and those associated with greater long COVID symptoms. Now, we've heard all over the news about the impact of obesity. In an obese individual, we have more inflammatory mediators. Like I said, belly fat creates its own inflammation, but also obesity comes with comorbidities. High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol levels, high triglyceride levels, and this puts more pressure on your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, and that again is putting us at greater risk of more complications in long COVID. Now, what else we are seeing is massively, it doesn't come so much as part of the acute infection, but certainly as part of the chronic infection, is this cytokine storm associated with COVID causing brain inflammation. And this is why so many people presenting with long COVID don't only have the fatigue, the battery cells not charging, but also have the neurological symptoms, the brain fog, the inability to put thoughts together, the constant headaches, the brain lethargy, like my brain is just not working. And this is huge in long COVID. Now, why are we seeing so much neuroinflammation? And what else would be driving that neuroinflammation? So triggers of neuroinflammation includes lack of sleep, which is why I'm advocating we are all focusing on a minimum of 8 hours sleep a night. Dietary protein reactivity. So this might be where we're eating foods that our body's reacting to. Things like gluten, gliadin, or dairy. If you know that you react to those foods and you're struggling with long COVID, you might need to take them out. Infections, so particularly here, SARS, COVID-19. Chemical triggers. Now, some people with long COVID are telling me that they are becoming more sensitive to chemicals, struggling with the smells of air purifiers, perfumes, potpourri, those sorts of things. They're becoming more sensitive to those chemicals. An inflammatory diet. The Western diet is very pro-inflammatory. That's our processed foods, our white carbohydrates, our white sugars. They are all pro-inflammatory. Alcohol is also pro-inflammatory. So if you're struggling with COVID-19, we need to work to reduce inflammation. Foods that are anti-inflammatory include oily fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, trout, turmeric, ginger, garlic. They've all got anti-inflammatory properties to them. You need to focus on sleep, 8 hours of sleep a night. You need to focus on reducing stress by encouraging downtime activities. These are all simple take-homes. Now, this was an article published in the New Scientist magazine. Could the coronavirus trigger post-viral fatigue syndrome? I think the coronavirus will lead to many, many cases of post-infective fatigue syndrome. And if you're listening to this today, you clearly have a concern about yourself or a loved one having long COVID symptoms. And those symptoms are very likely to include a chronic fatigue. Now, how can I make sense of this to you? Your battery cells are not charging. Or if you're thinking about your mobile phone and you plug it in at night, I doubt you're waking up to 100% charge in the morning. Maybe you're waking up to what, 30, 40% charge? So you fatigue again very quickly. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There are nutrients that can help you to recharge those battery cells. For most of my long COVID clients, I'm actually testing their battery cells to find out what or where they're going wrong, because not everybody, they go wrong at the same place. The clinical and sleep features of chronic post-SARS from a syndrome of chronic fatigue, pain, weakness, depression, and sleep disturbances, which overlap with the clinical and sleep features of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. And this is what people are saying. So this research, this paper wasn't about COVID-19, but the previous SARS infection, that it results in like a painful muscles afterwards, which is what a client with fibromyalgia will tell you that they've been struggling with long term. Again, there's things that we can do to help. Magnesium is a very basic that helps with muscle fatigue, muscle contraction and dilation. And the cheapest way to get this into your body is Epsom salts. Bathing with Epsom salts in the bath with you. So we can see that in long COVID, there is escalating inflammation. Maybe you feel that inflammation. Maybe you feel that your body is sore, it's achy, it's stiff. That's the inflammation. We need to work to reduce that inflammation before it becomes significant throughout your body over an extended period of time. So what are some take homes? From a nutrition point of view, clean out your diet, get rid of those processed foods, put a focus on anti-inflammatory, a focus on whole foods, cooking from scratch, things like soups and stews. You can batch cook. If you're not feeling well, a soup maker, a slow cooker, they're great tools to get those massive amounts of phytonutrients into your body. Stress. You need to give away those stressors that aren't important to you now. If you're not able to do your work, you need to switch off. You need to take a break, a mental break away from those stressors. You must focus on sleep. You will not get 8 hours sleep if you're not in bed for a minimum of 8 hours. It just doesn't add up. Exercise, albeit very gentle. So I don't encourage people to exercise in the acute COVID, but when we're getting into long COVID, very gentle walks, yoga stretches, that's a great place to start. And you know what else is super important? Connection. When you're feeling unwell, when you're not able to see your loved ones, you're in lockdown, that really has an impact on our mental health. Not just long COVID sufferers, but everybody's suffering with lack of connection. But reach out to people, and even a virtual hug makes a massive amount of difference. So there's 3 mechanisms that may be involved in the ability of food-derived compounds to reduce viral infection severity, and they are balancing inflammatory pathways, more of that anti-inflammatory foods, reducing oxidative stress and increasing antioxidant levels. This is our rainbow of color, foods that are red, orange, yellow, greens, blues and purples, and whites and tans. They're your vegetables, your salads, your herbs, bit of fruit. Aim for a minimum of 1, ideally 2 from each color each day. And harmonizing the gut microbiome, i.e. ensuring you've got the right gut bacteria. You might need to come and book in with me so I can help you to understand where that's out of balance. So that gut microbiome at the moment might not be favorable to anti-inflammatory bugs, but we can put those back in there. And it might have more of the pro-inflammatory bugs in there. We can get rid of those. So like I said, our rainbow of color is so important. Sleep. And what I've done is just put you a little bit of research here. Now, what we do see in long COVID is many clients present with gut permeability, or leaky gut is another way to describe it. And in leaky gut, what happens is those membranes start to open up in the gut lining, and this allows bacteria to leave the gut and enter the bloodstream, but it also allows the virus and the inflammation from COVID to enter into the gut. And this is why so many people have gut symptoms as part of long COVID, but even if you don't have gut symptoms, it doesn't mean that there's not gut problems there that need addressing. That gut brain connectivity is also huge. Our gut helps to regulate our nervous system. Our gut helps our brains to work more effectively. So if you're struggling from a brain point of view, I might need to start working with you from your gut upwards. And like I said, getting that optimal amount of sleep is so important. So let's just go over that full body approach. Reduce oxidation, eat your rainbow, hypoxia, make sure we're breathing properly, deep belly breathing, 10 minutes of meditation a day. We need to give your immune system some support against the active infection. If you've still got viral load within your body, that might be a vitamin C, it might be a zinc. I've got lots of tools in my toolkit. We might need to think about hormonal imbalance. Remember, hormones aren't just sex hormones. They're also stress hormones. They're also blood sugar balancing hormones. So if you are realizing that your blood sugars are out of balance, you've got highs and lows, your appetite's out of balance, your sleep regulated by melatonin is out of balance. These are all hormones that I can work to put back into balance. We then want to regulate your immune system. We've got a long winter ahead of us and we need an optimal working immune system. We might need to get rid of environmental toxins, particularly those people who are struggling with chemical sensitivity. We need to clear out those chemical air fresheners or candles that are full of chemicals. And we might need to replace it with like a soy-based candle or natural essential oils. They are the beginning of things that we can do. Now, giving your body a break and actually allowing it to recover via having periods of fasting in every day. Fasting window should be a minimum of 12 and up to 16 hours. It does vary from person to person, but by giving your body a break, it actually allows you to dampen that inflammatory response and start the healing process. Vitamin D has been talked about all over the news, and I am really keen to get everybody's vitamin D tested. You can get your vitamin D tested with a finger prick test on somewhere called City Assays. So if you just Google City Assays and vitamin D, it will come up. The cost of the test, I think, is £29. And with that, we'd be able to see what your vitamin D looks like. Optimal vitamin D levels are about 80 nanomoles per litre, not what the NHS says, which is just 50 nanomoles per litre. If you're running shy of that 80, we would want to supplement you. Now, there's lots of supplements that I can consider, not just from the vitamin D, but also the immune regulating vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc. We also then have our anti-inflammatory, our fish oil, and our curcumin and our resveratrol. We've got our liver supporting glutathione and NAC, and NAC helps with the lungs, particularly when there's active infection in there. The list goes on. I would need to write an individualized prescription for you to make this about you. But these are some of the supplements I've been using as part of my long COVID protocols. I really hope that that has helped and given you a little bit of light at the end of a very dark tunnel. If you're struggling, don't struggle alone. I'm here to help you. I look forward to seeing you in the future. You take care. Bye-bye.